Tim,
Antoine, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's been a while. I think it's Pro Cigar,
Been a little while, yes.
right under the radar with the coronavirus.
Barely got that one in, right?
Yep. Have you been?
Really good. Been very busy. Just keeping my head down, working hard, and trying to keep up with some great growth. So
How's the family?
family is good. I got two of my kids off to college within the last few weeks, and my oldest son and his wife are expecting their second child in February. So I'm going to be a grandfather, grandfather number two in February.
Wow.
So, and
Time
Monday,
flies.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Monday they're going to do the reveal party or whatever to find out what it is.
As long as they don't start any fires like the last reveal party in California.
Yeah, no fireworks, nothing crazy like that.
Oh, well, like I said, thank you for coming on today. I had my list of, this is, as I tell people, kind of part two of season one, just year one of doing this. So I knew I wanted Boveda on at some point because we do so much together with the magazines and the trade show.
Yeah,
So I know people probably get tired of hearing your story, but I always think it's a cool story to tell just because you tell it so well, especially when you're the one telling it. I remember when I first heard the story, we were at SpecCom still, and it was Ben who had just met you. Must have been at IPCPR, one of his first IPCPRs. And I remember he came back and he was so excited to tell the Boveda story. And I was like, yeah, I was like, that's especially the different hurdles you have to jump through just to get Boveda up and going. I just thought it would be a great story, especially nowadays with so many people having to reevaluate what they're doing business-wise and professionally. To hear your story, I think will be inspiring, and hopefully will get them to jump into whatever they may be hesitating to do or feel like they can't do and accomplish and all that kind of stuff.
sure.
So,
Well, you tell me, where do you want me to begin?
well, I always like to establish where you came from before you jumped into the whole Boveda thing. So give us a little background of, what was your background like before Boveda? Because everybody knows you now as the Boveda guy, you and Sean. So what was life like before Boveda?
Well, that's a good question. So when I had graduated from college in 1989 from a small school here in Minnesota called Bethel College, now called Bethel University, ultimately that's where Sean and I had met. So that's where we started our relationship. I had done an sales intern with a company called Skyline Displays, and they were the world's leading manufacturer of portable displays for trade shows and exhibits. So when we do all those trade shows, a lot of the exhibits within the hall are typically manufactured by Skyline Displays, who happens to be based in Minnesota. So when I was, as I said, during my senior year, I did a little sales intern with them in the spring. And then when I graduated in late May, went on to become one of their sales reps in a straight commission sales job. And that kind of started off my career. And I was with them until the day that I left to be full-time within, at the time our company was called Humidipack. So it was about a nine and a half year journey with Skyline in sales for them. And similar to Sean had a sales background, and since being friends in college, Sean and I had done a couple side businesses together prior to really forming Boveda as we know it today. And so we had a little bit of a history with each other of doing a little bit of side business work. And what ultimately got us to the formation of Humidipack at the time really there's another name, SAGE, but it was acronyms for Smoke 'em if you got 'em. And that was the original founder's company name because he was making humidors. So to give you the background how we got here, I was listening to a radio show, and it was about this time of year in 1996. And this one particular radio show was interviewing an individual that was talking about humidors and how he was making these humidors out of exotic woods, and they were these small little portable humidors. And he had designed them in such a way that they were indestructible. You know, you could run a car over them, and they were wood. And so he had a really cool story. And I didn't catch his name or his company name during the radio show because I was driving. And so I called the radio station and I said, "Hey, you interviewed this guy. What's his name? Can I get his number?" They said, "Absolutely," gave it to me. And so I called him. His name was David Bergstedt. And he was a humidor maker, had this small little woodworking shop in a kind of an outside town of the Minneapolis area, and had a really good conversation with him and said, "Hey, I'm interested in buying one of your humidors." And he said, "Well, why don't you come out and see my woodworking shop? I'll show you what I do." Very personal guy. And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So I called Sean, and who is the CEO and business partner of Boveda, and said, "Hey, let's go out and see this guy." So Sean and I, after college, we would get together and smoke cigars. And a group of us would get together and smoke cigars. So as you know, during the 90s, it was kind of a cool thing to do, certainly in the mid to, right around that 94, 95, 96 time frame, before the crash really kind of happened in 98. So 96 was at a really good height of the busyness and the boom of it. So we were smoked cigars, got together, and so we went out to see David, and we ended up buying a couple of his humidors, and actually then commissioned him to make us these end table humidors, kind of like a Vigilant. That's what you would see in the ads back then. Are you, Antoine, are you familiar with Vigilant?
No.
Okay, well, if you look them up, they're still around, and they still make humidors, but they make these very expensive cabinet style humidors. And we said, "We want you to make us one of these." So Sean did his out of dark walnut, black walnut, and then I did mine out of cherry, but they were end tables with, drawers and doors on them. And so during the course of time, while David was making these humidors for us, we ended up becoming friends with him. And one night, Sean was having a dinner party, and where we were going to eat steaks, smoke cigars, and drink some whiskey and bourbon after dinner. And we invited, Sean had invited David. And that particular night, David came over. Now, this is all the way into the spring of 97. So we meet him in August of 96, making these humidors. Took him several months. And this is in early spring of 97. Comes over for dinner, and we're with like 6, 7 other guys. And he comes in with this little prototype thing. And he says, "Hey, watch this. I'm going to put this in this bag and with a hygrometer, and at the end of the night, it's going to read 75%. And we were like, "Okay, yeah, whatever. All right, that's cool, whatever. And so he puts this little kind of a packet form piece into this bag with a hygrometer. I think it started in the mid 50s. And by the end of dinner and the end of the night, we went to go look at the bag, and it was at 75%. I mean, it was dead on. And Sean and I were like, "Holy cow, what do we got going on here?" And he kind of explained to us a little bit of his vision, what he wanted to try and do. And he, in parallel to that, back in probably late 95 or 96, had started to work with Dr. Al and Bob Essie, who are two of the founding partners as well. They were really the co-inventors of the technology, the brains behind the technology as we know it is Boveda today. And so they had been working, and David and Sean and I have been kind of working together. And then right after that, that particular evening, even David said, "Hey," he goes, "I don't really know how to run a business. I really don't have any money. And do you guys want to be my business partners?" And Sean and I were like, "Well, sure, yeah, let's talk about this. This looks like a pretty cool opportunity." And prior to that, we might have had some discussions about opportunities of how this technology could work, not only in the tobacco market, but also within food. Two of the co-inventors, Dr. Allen and Bob Essie, are one was a food scientist, the other was a food packaging engineer from General Mills. So as we looked at the overall market, we realized, okay, this is really a lot bigger than just cigars. Although cigars was our entree into getting a product into market because it was such an explicit need and such a demanding market that we figured, hey, we could get a product out here, fuel some cash flows that'll help us develop the company and then go into other markets. And so it's really kind of how it happened. And like I said, late in early spring of '97, by July, I think 5th or 6th, somewhere in there, we had written all of our bylaws, put our business contracts together, and we incorporated under, well, at that time, Sage Humidic Control. So that was one name. We made up the word humidic and control because we knew it could control humidity versus other things. And then shortly thereafter, we went to Humidipack. And it wasn't until about 2012-ish or so that we went full on to Boveda as a corporate and product name. So that was kind of how it happened. It was, I was in the right place at the right time, made a great phone call to meet somebody, and Sean and I went over and became friends with them, and just had an opportunity to, see something that was really special, and jumped on the opportunity, and put a lot of faith and risk into what we thought was going to be where we are today.
And what it sounds like is early on, you treated it like a business. So you talked about bylaws and stuff that people don't really think about when they're starting a business. A lot of people just like to jump right into it and get the product out there, and then these other things kind of come in later. So do you think that was kind of part of the success, that you saw it as a viable business and you needed to get all of that stuff done and figured out before you got too far into the business? Because you could have either done it either way, but it seems like early on that was like important to get that established and worked on.
It was. I think when you have 6 individuals that are all coming together, families, technology, patents were going to be applied for, if not already applied for, fuzzy on the exact dates, but, we knew we had a patentable technology, and, 2 very accomplished individuals from General Mills that were retired. They were already in their 60s. They had recently retired from General Mills, and they were doing consulting on their own. So they were established business guys. Sean and I had, a good 10 years, 8 to 10 years of business experience that led us to believe that this is the right thing to do. And then David and one other individual that owned the woodworking shop that David was in. So that was the group of us that came together. But yeah, it was, and it turned out to be, you don't need contracts until you need them. And shortly thereafter, within about a year and a half, we had bought out David, the original founder, and he wasn't great for the business, and we recognized that and said, hey, I think it's time for us to buy you out, and we move on. And at that time too, when you're looking at this, we put the patents into the company name versus the individuals. That was part of the agreement, so that Boveda, the company in itself, had the asset and the strength, and weren't worried about licensing agreements. It was owned, and we had to come in with some money. We anteed up, mainly Sean and I, with money to fund it. Sean quit his job immediately. I didn't quit mine until months later, just due to the fact that I had 2 kids,
right,
and was trying to wean off my 10-year career and get into this. But one of the more fun stories about this whole piece was, as I was talking about, we did our bylaws, got our business contract together. That was in July. Late July is back then called the RTDA. And we knew by doing our very, short period of time of research into the industry from spring until July, that the RTDA show was the show you have to be at.
All right.
And so this was kind of one of our fun stories and how we just crammed to make this stuff happen. But we called every exhibitor at that show. We wanted to get a booth, called the RTDA, no booths available. I mean, you're in the boon of the industry. I mean, everybody wants to be there. It was being held in Orlando at the Marriott. We called every exhibitor. Can we have 2 feet of your space? Can we share the booth? We'll pay for it. Let us get in there. Can we get tickets to get in? No to everything. And we were like, oh my gosh, you know, we have to be at this show in order to launch this product, which the product was called the Humidor Bag, or Humidipack, and then went to the Humidor Bag, and then to the Humidor Bag. So as you know, our product today, the Humidor Bag, that was our very first product that we had. And our slogan behind that was for the retailers, because they were all giving away Ziploc baggies anyway. We said, you know, turn this into a profit center. No longer do you have to give away Ziploc baggies. You can now give away a 90-day humidor bag and sell it for $4 or $5, $6, $7. I think it was $7 was the original, and it would last for 90 days. So that's what we went to go to launch. So back to the story, we couldn't get anything, couldn't get any exhibitors. So we said, well, fine, we're going to show up anyway. So then we called the hotel, no rooms. Called hotels around it, no rooms available. You know, this is over summer, in Orlando, so all the rooms were booked. No room at the hotel. So we had this idea: let's rent an RV when we fly into Orlando. Let's rent an RV, and we'll sleep in that, and we'll park it in the parking lot of the hotel. And we made up all these banners that, you know, on the side said Sage, humidity control. And so we went out, and then we stuck those on the sides, you know, with the grommets, and hooked them up somehow to the side of the thing. And we made that our meeting room. So we were inviting people into the RV, and we were smoking cigars for, you know, the 4 days, however long we were there, 4 or 5 days. I'm sure we returned that thing, and I'm sure they were like, what, who wrecked this? Because we were smoking like a chimneys in there. So what we would do is, at the show, we couldn't get in. We tried to get in. In fact, we snuck in one time and got kicked out. Security escorted us out. We would go to all the, you know, a couple different entrances, and Sean and I had backpacks on, and David, and we'd put the samples in there, and we would, you know, pull these out and say, hey, are you buying or selling at this show? And anybody that said I'm buying, we're like, hey, have you ever heard of Humidipack? And they'd be like, no. Well, this is the greatest product ever. You got to try this thing. And we took orders. So we took about 65 orders just out in the hallways, in the bars, restaurants. We'd, you know, go off of the strip, or, you know, wherever it was, and go to a restaurant. We'd run in, see people with badges on. We'd start talking to them, and hang out at the hotel bar at night and try and meet as many people as we could. And so we opened up about 65 accounts, I believe. And we were, you know, we thought we were pretty cool. You know, wow, we got something here. Let's, you know, and now we have to go back and make it. That was, you know, a whole nother side of the story. But it was a really fun event and an experience for us. It seemed, you know, to be successful. We really went guerrilla marketing in there, but you wouldn't believe how many times we got kicked out of the entrances. And Bill Fader was the president at that time, and he owned some, I think, tinder boxes maybe in Maryland back then. And that guy was trying to find us everywhere. So Sean and I go back, we put a hat on, we go change our shirt, go to the other side, and did that for as many days as possible. But so that kind of launched us into the cigar market right there.
Yeah, and you were saying, you know, you got into the cigar market first because I guess that was the biggest opportunity to get in there. But at the beginning, did you know, like, the different industries Boveda could impact, and you just chose cigars because you saw that might be the easiest way to kind of build up an audience, and then you would expand from there?
Yeah, exactly right. So through our, you know, having our meetings through that spring of '97 with our other partners, you know, since one was a food scientist and a packaging engineer, we started to look at all the other moisture sensitive products that were out there. In fact, our original patent even has musical instruments written into it. So Dr. Al, who was a lover of the orchestra and music, we had recognized that wooden stringed instruments are very moisture sensitive. So any changes in the wood dynamics, because you have a neck and then you have a body, which are going in two different directions. So any moisture change tweaks those, and then obviously then you're out of tune, and it can be very damaging to very expensive items, whether it be a very high-end acoustic guitar or a violin. And so we recognized that was an opportunity. We looked at food, we looked at pharmaceuticals, obviously premium cigars, and just very other small ancillary ones that could be of an opportunity.
So Ben wants to know, what's your biggest market right now? Is it still cigars, or is it something else?
So the fastest and the biggest emerging market for us is cannabis globally. We never started our company to go after that market. We did enter it into 2007 through a distributor into the California medical market, into dispensaries. But cigars still is our biggest portion of our business. When you add up all of our what we do with cigar makers, cigar retailers, cigar consumers. However, the fastest growing market for us is the cannabis sector.
But the cannabis stuff, I'm curious, because I know, like in the media side, I mean, we see that cannabis and hemp and all that kind of stuff is growing and becoming more popular. But to do coverage of that in like a tobacco setting is hard, because your cigar retailers and tobacco retailers and growers, they're very protective of their different platforms and companies. So did you encounter any resistance from cigar people once they started seeing you getting into cannabis? Did they not care? Because I know, like I said, we encountered some of that on the media side, where they like, you're supposed to be for us. We don't want you working for these people or promoting these people. These are a completely different audience. So what was your experience like?
I think everybody was fairly good about it. Sure, there was a few people, but it wasn't really what they were experiencing, though, is that people from the cannabis side were coming into their store to buy Boveda because they had heard that was, the best way to store your cannabis. Now, the cigar relative humidities are too high for cannabis. So we have a 58 and a 62 for the ideal range for cannabis. And obviously cigars, we go from 65, 69, 72, 75, depending on where you live and how good or bad your humidor is. So you can try and get into that 69 to 70% range. But what we were finding is the cigar retailers were calling us saying, hey, I got a lot of people coming in from, alternative markets looking for your product. And eventually, when we did have the different relative humidities, some of them embraced it and said, well, they're coming in anyway, I should sell them that. But we did have some that said, I don't want them in my store. And, because the industry still has that stigmatism of stoners and Spicolis coming in, where now as it's becoming a viable medical product, medicinal use, you're getting, more professionals in, or at least more professionals that are admitting that they're into that way of life, or even for medicine purposes. So, but overall, we were pretty good. Now, as a company, we looked at it and said, okay, if we were going to try and get into a food market and work with a big food company, yet we have this product over here in cannabis, would that hurt our ability to work with a mainstream food company? Versus, it was one of the things that we had to really think about. Do we just come out with a separate product, not even named Boveda or Humidipack at that time, and market it to that market? Ultimately, what we did, we bundled it all under the same brand name, and just trying to be the global leader and category king in every category, whether it be cigars or cannabis.
And I know Ben has another question, which is, how does Boveda kind of help the cannabis and hemp growers, I guess, because we know how it, if you're a cigar smoker, you kind of know at this point you need Boveda, and for your products to keep them fresh from from the factory down to the when they're in the retail store. So, do cannabis and hemp people use your products in the same way? Is it a certain stage in the process that they use it more?
Yeah, that is a great question. So we really are in cannabis cure to consumption. What cure means is after it's harvested, they cure it to dry it out. Very similar to, the way that you work with tobacco as you're trying to get the impurities out of it before you use it. What's really unique about our application in our need in the cannabis is that sure, there's a couple of things that are most people would look at. Cannabis is sold by weight. So if you have very dry cannabis and you've dried it all out, yet you're supposed to be at 62% and you're selling it at 40%, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. That's one aspect. That's just that. But really the key is the quality and the terpene loss. So what we do is we prevent the loss of terpenes. Terpenes are kind of what hold all the goodies into the trichome head of a cannabis flower. In that trichome head are CBDs and THCs and terpenes, and those typically will evaporate out. So what we do is we have the original terpene shield for cannabis. What we in essence do is we put a monolayer of water around the cannabis flower, and we lock all that in so that it doesn't evaporate out into the air. And terpenes are just really the smell of it. So if you've ever smelled weed, it smells like skunk. Well, that's the terpenes evaporating out into the air. That's why you get a big nose hit off of it. But that's, in reality, that is bad because that means it's all evaporated. So if you parlay what we do into tobaccos, into cigar, what we did is, back in our slogan was that Boveda, or Humidipack at the time, we prevent the loss of the natural oils, sugars, and flavor of the cigars. Because what would happen, the same thing with cigars, is they would leave the factory in prime, pristine condition. Then they either go into a truck, a boat, a plane, and then they get to the US, and then they go in a UPS truck. So what happens is they are subject, after they leave that factory dock, they are subject to the ambient environment other than what your box is in an overwrap. Without Boveda, they are experiencing these highs and lows of temperature, but also in humidity. So every time that cigar dries out, it's lost those natural oils and flavor and sugars. They've evaporated. Then it goes back up into humidity, and it does that, and it just keeps cycling. So what Boveda does is we just eliminate that. We flatline that, and we lock all that in. So if we have the proper moisture within that cigar as it goes through shipping, distribution, and the sales channels, then you're getting almost what the factory had intended it to be. And if the story goes way back when we started working with Carlito, Carlos Fuente Jr. in the very beginning, he said a couple things. One is he said, I'm because it's so rainy in the Dominican Republic and such high humidity, his cigars, since they were so oily and they would absorb the moisture. So he wanted to eliminate that issue. But he also said, if you can truly do what you guys say you can do, you will change this industry. And he goes, and everybody will need to package with you because of what you're gonna do for them. And his experience was he stored cigars with Humidipack at that time. And he called me one day, and I was hounding him like nobody's business, man. I was all over him. And he would see my number coming. He's like, oh, man. So, but he actually called me, and I about fell over when I saw on the caller ID that Carlos Fuente Jr. was calling me. And I was like, yeah, hello? And he goes, I just got to tell you something. He goes, I just smoked the Fuente Opus X that I had stored with the Humidipack. And he goes, there was something about that cigar that was different. It was so good. It was so good, Tim, I wanted to eat it. He goes, I thought maybe I was a little bit crazy. He goes, but I gave a cigar to my dad on the other night, and I said, you smoke this and tell me what you think. And he goes, man, that's really good. What's different? What'd you do to it? And he goes, He goes, Dad, I stored them with the humidipack. And that from that point on, then Carlito was a complete believer. And as we put that together with Fuente, it was really about capturing the perfect climate of Chateau de la Fuente down in the Dominican Republic. And Carlito had experienced, and I'm sure other cigar makers have too, is that when you were smoking that cigar in the Dominican Republic after it's been rolled and aged, and it hasn't gone through that distribution channel, it tastes different. He would take that same cigar and smoke it in the United States a week later, and he's like, something's off, something's different. Well, the humidity, it had been exposed to, without any control of humidity, it was exposed to the ambient environment, and it had lost some of its natural oils and flavor.
Have you done that experiment ever in a store or with a manufacturer where you take one of their cigars and you take one that's not gone through the Boveda, been humidified by Boveda, and then one that has, and said, this is the difference, and they go, wow, now I see. Because I think if sometimes if you read it in a brochure or on a website, you probably understand, but you don't get it until you actually taste the difference, like Carlito did. That seemed to have been the big light bulb moment, like, wow, it does work. This is what they're talking about.
Yeah, that was the aha moment for him. And but we would also do a lot of water activity testing. What water activity testing is, it's kind of like moisture content, where most people would understand what that means. But we would take cigars that had gone through the distribution channel, a test with and without Boveda, and then measure the moisture, the water activity as we call it, which is closer to the relative humidity, not the moisture content of 13%. Although they're somewhat related, but it's scientific. I won't get into the details of that. But the water activity, there was a difference. The ones shipped and stored with Boveda were dead on. They were, right at 69% where they needed to be. The other ones had gone up, because remember, the Boveda has the ability to pull that excess moisture out. If they leave the dock too humid, it'll pull it in. And then in the reverse, if it's going through dry climates, it'll give off. So the Boveda uses its livelihood in order to sacrifice for the cigars. So we did a lot of those tests, and they were all just showed exactly that we did what we said we did. And then we would go off and randomly buy cigars at the store that through humidors, and we had a range of humidities in the same humidor at a store of different cigars that were anywhere from 40% relative humidity as high as 75, and it didn't matter. Those cigars had come in and gone through such a rough process, an unfriendly shipping environment, and that's kind of what we bring to the cannabis. Back to your original question, that's what we bring back into that. We build this monolayer around it, protects it so that the terpenes don't evaporate. They are locked within the cannabis, and then that's where you get the full bouquet of what that medicine, for most cases, was intended to be. We keep mold out too, which is a really, really big piece of that. We keep it under the mold threshold, and so from the safety and efficacy standpoint, in the medical side, it's very important.
Yeah, somebody just said that Boveda is a must-have in their humidor. In Hawaii, and it keeps the right RH levels. So there's a testimonial right there in the middle of this interview. What I like about Boveda too is that it's not just the little Boveda packs that you all do. You have different products. Like my favorite is the Humidor bag, like the big one, which I have right here. Like this is my Davidoff one.
Yeah, that's great.
You can see some Perdomo ones in there, and Davidoff. And definitely during COVID times, I've been reorganizing all my cigars and trying to get them sorted out. I've been going to Amazon, buying the bags like that in the little packs, and I love it because there's no humidor big enough to keep right now all of these cigars that I have and bringing in from the office fresh. So I love that. And you also have like the Butler. You have an awesome humidor period. It's like acrylic one that's see-through. So I like all these different things. I don't know if people know all of these different products. It's not just the little packs that you see. You know, you've created a line of products that really are for the cigar lifestyle.
Yeah, you know, and it's evolved over time. You know, we never really, well, one time we tried to get into the humidor business, and we had some success with it, but making humidors and having them shipped from, well, these were handmade in the Dominican Republic, which were really nice, all built around Boveda. So we had this floating tray, kind of like in our large acrylic humidor, you have that tray that comes out and then the Boveda sits underneath. So this humidor we built had Boveda in the lid and underneath, and it was like 360, just cushioning of the right humidity around all of your cigars, so you don't have to rotate them or worry that, you know, the old one-way humidifiers with the up in the lid, those cigars closest to that device are going to suck up all the moisture. Well, that's impossible with Boveda. What happens is those cigars closest might get to 69%, but they stop, and then it starts going to all the other ones. So when we were, you know, encompassing everything Boveda all around it, it was just a perfect match made in heaven. But again, you know, the acrylic humidors are, you know, a nice piece. I mean, they're a 1-year humidor, so it's for that person that might, you know, doesn't want to have to ever tend to it, or they have a second home or you know, a boat or a cabin or something where they want to they put them up there and they set it and forget it and such. So yeah, we've kind of evolved with holders and our humidor bags. You know, this is quite a different iteration from what it originally looked like, but the concept is identical. I mean, it's a bag. You put cigars in it, and you know, this is a 6-month to a 1-year humidor right there, and all of that for $7. There's not too many even $3,000 humidors that will do a better job of storing your cigars than this $7 piece. And by the way, I'm supposed to be golfing, so I'm at a friend's country club. That's where I'm sitting right now, up in a little hut, outdoor screen place. It's awesome. But so this is what I brought today to smoke my cigars on the golf course.
I know you get this question a lot from cigar smokers, but you know, what's the best Boveda pack to get for their cigars?
Well, preferably for me, it's 69%. So a lot of people ask, well, why are there 4 different relative humidities? That's a very common question that we get. Well, it's for several reasons. It is for personal preference, might be the climate that you live in, or it might be how crappy is your humidor or how good is your humidor. So for me, you know, and then what type of cigars do you smoke? I mean, that's a big one, part of that too. So certain cigars can accept moisture differently. We've done a lot of tests with a lot of the makers, certainly with Fuente and even CAO back in the day, and gosh, I could, you know, EPC, all these guys, Rocky. We've done moisture tests with all of these guys, and I can give you one example. So take the Opus X, very thick, oily wrapper. That is ideal at 65% relative humidity, because if you get it into the 69 or even 72, you'll start to see at 72, mold can start to grow on that because it's so oily. I mean, it just sucks up the moisture. And again, that's why Carlito was like, I'm more interested in pulling out moisture most of the time, because, you know, his opuses are so oily, than I am adding it. But if you take a Don Carlos, that can sit in 72% all day long. And it's ideal because it's such a thin, fragile wrapper. You take a Maduro can be 69 or 65 because it's so thick and oily. It just hygroscopic. It absorbs that moisture a lot more than say a Cameroon or even a Connecticut shade. You know, a lot of people in Cubans love 65 or even lower. You know, that might be a European concept for them. But so for me, 69% is ideal. My LE Blue humidors, I have 60, 65. And then I have a couple of China-made humidors that were, you know, made by a manufacturer as kind of one of their gift boxes, not really a high-end. And I have to use 72s or 75s in the wintertime, especially in Minnesota, just to keep it at 69%, because they leak so much moisture. You need a 72 or 75 to kind of resupply it to stay at that number.
and here's a question you maybe you don't get a lot of, but to get the most out of your Boveda hack and the effects of it, you have to keep the cellophane on or take it off?
It does not matter. What cellophane does do, it slows down the rate of moisture gain or loss. It's not a perfect seal. So if you, I usually keep the cellophane on because when I put them in humidor bags and I travel with them, it protects the wrapper. For me, it's more of a protection mechanism than it is a whether it allows it in or not, in or out or not. I will say that when, in one of my LA Blue humidors, uncellowed cigars, I think have a great cedar flavor to them after they've been in there for a long time. I do think that that does impart this, Spanish cedar imparts a nice flavor to it. But cellophane is just an inhibitor. It slows it down. That's it. Doesn't stop it.
One of the things that I like about Boveda as well is that, you made this product and to market it. I mean, you could do your usual print ads that you've done. You could do web banners, but you also create content to promote either the cannabis stuff or the cigar stuff. And I know Rob, he's great at doing these interviews with these different cigar people. The same from, like I said, on the cannabis side. So what's that been like creating? Because that's a completely different different mode of marketing, getting into that mentality of how do you create content? How do you market something outside of the normal? And I think you're very much ahead of your time, because that kind of marketing now is with COVID, interviews and stuff like this is now common, but you were doing it long before then. So what's that process been like?
It's been a great process. It was a wonderful learning experience. And it was not like we sat in our boardroom and said, here's what we're going to do. It grew organically. Rob has just a natural talent. He had a desire and a love to try and do something like that. And we were like, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it and see what it turns out to be. And he's just become just a true natural at it. But the dude, he loves cigars. You think Sean and I like cigars. I think Rob wakes up with one in his mouth every morning. Right, Rob? I don't know if you're listening or not, but it's been a really neat evolution, because as you said, it was a little bit before the time, but everybody's kind of gone to that, content, where they say content is king, in a sense where it just kind of organically grew for us out of a love and a passion. But we had a really good vehicle to do it, because we work with the cigar makers, and who tells a better story than the cigar maker themselves? I mean, that's why you have everybody on. I mean, you want those people because the consumers love to hear their story and what are they like and what do they smoke and what's their preference and how'd they do it. And and Rob's done a good job of highlighting our Cigar of the Month customers, anybody influential in the industry, even, newcomers like, not John Sally, but who's the other basketball player? Why can't I think of his name? Karl Malone, and having interviews with guys like that. And, but it's been joyous on our side, because we've gotten to know these guys even better through that process. And I think they enjoy it too. So, we've tried to take that in trying to be good stewards of what we have in the industry. It's fun to tell those stories and to be a part of them, and to, we always say, Boveda, we're not the star of the show. We're just we're an accessory in there. But we've been able to work with some of the greats, and to be able to share their stories has been a fun and rewarding experience for us.
Yeah, and what I like about Box Press, was just your podcast that you do with the different cigar makers, is, like you said, it's most of them are just solely focused on the person you're interviewing. So it's not like a sales pitch. It's not, people don't get that icky feeling that you're trying to push something on them. It's really focused on, here's somebody who probably uses our product, but get to know them. And I think there's a lot of value in that, because I don't know, me as a consumer, I don't care about ratings as much. And I don't understand them because I just look at them and I don't know what a 91 or 93 means. So I want to know who that person is. And I think Box Press does a really good job at focusing on, let's find out who this person is. And then to me, that creates a much better connection between you and that person. And then it pushes you to want to buy that product.
Yeah, I agree. It was never designed to be, let's sell Boveda. It was designed to highlight our people that we work with. And like I said, tell their story. And everybody's got a great story. I mean, everybody's got an interesting story. And those really become alive. It humanizes the individuals, whether it be John Huber, Pete Johnson, the folks from Davidoff, Klaas, and, all these, these people that are behind the scenes. You don't really get a lot of time with them, and it does humanize them quite a bit.
I know for you, like, how does it feel now that you've been in this business so long and Boveda's had the success that it has, to like walk into like Tabacalera de Garcia and see Boveda stickers being, Boveda stickers, Boveda packs being put into each box? Because I remember Pro Cigar, not this year, but last year, I think we all were in the same group, or our groups were like right next to each other. And I know you all were like going around trying to check and say, we want to see our stuff getting put into the boxes, and, standing there and watching it be done. And here you are in a completely different continent, different area, and to see all those years of work going to, here you are. So how does that feel, just as an entrepreneur in business?
Well, you can see the smile on my face. It's really cool. You have to, for us, it's satisfying because of all the hard work. I mean, look, this is our 23rd year in business. Hard to believe. I'm one of the old guys now. And I look in the screen, I'm like, holy cow, do I look old? I don't think I still feel like I'm 25 years old, and most days anyway. But anyway, I think I'm 25 years old. And but it's really neat because, Sean and I, when we first started working with some of the great cigar people, Tabacalera de Garcia, and meeting those people and working with Carlito and Lito Gomez and I could go down the list, Hochi Blanco. It's like, wow, we're actually at the table with these folks. We are an important piece to the industry, and it's very satisfying. It's fun. I mean, yeah, you go into I take pictures like I'm a kid in a candy store. I'm like, and I send them to my wife, and I'm like, hey, check this out. Here I am in the Dominican Republic, and they're putting Boveda in there. And it's pretty satisfying. A quick story for you too. We were, this was many, many years ago. This was probably in the, maybe even 98, 99. So we weren't even, no, I'm sorry. Would have been 2001 or two. So we had just done our deal with Fuente, and we were making the Humidor bags, and it has, Carlos Sr. and Jr. on it. You've seen those. We still make that for them. Sean and I were walking in New York City. First time I've ever been to New York City. We're like, hey, let's go down to Little Italy. Let's go eat somewhere down there. Walking down the streets, and if you've ever been on those streets, they're busy. There's a ton of people walking. And we see this dude running, all of a sudden coming out of the crowd, and he's running. And he's got his arms full of humidor bags, the Fuente humidor bags. And he just comes running right by us. And Sean and I turned around, we were like, are you kidding me? Did we just see that? Did that just really happen? And, and it kind of hits you where you're like, wow, it's reality. Our product and what we do is truly making an impact into the marketplace. But it's fun. We're just a couple normal people from Minnesota that had a great opportunity. We're so blessed, and we're just trying to do everything that we can to build it right and be good people with it.
I mean, where do you see yourself taking Boveda from here? I mean, you've been in the game 23 years. So what does the next 23 look like?
Well, there's no letting off the gas pedal. We are as motivated now today as we were back in in 97, 98, when we were starting it, we have really aggressive growth plans for our company to double, triple our size. And that can happen. I mean, we're still, even after 23 years, we have tremendous growth in the cigar business. Even though we're considered we have large market share and everybody knows us, not everybody knows us. There's still a lot of room out there, and that's our goal, is to get it all. And the same thing in the other industries, the music industry, there's a ton of growth there. The cannabis, ton of growth globally as that starts to grow and emerge. And we just have a very special technology that does a very good job for a very important reason. And we're like I said, we're blessed. We're just trying to be really good stewards with what we have and keep growing our company.
So this is one of my favorite Oprah questions. But what have you learned about yourself since you started this business?
That I like cigars. I truly love cigars. Let's see, what have I learned about myself? I think professionally, over those 23 years, grown and learned a lot. Learned a lot about leadership in that standpoint. My desire and capacity to want to keep learning and wanting to be a part of growing is probably, when you were younger in school, some people love school. I didn't particularly like school. I didn't really love to read that much. I had to work hard at it to get decent grades, but I did work hard at it. I always had a good work ethic, but I think as the older I've gotten, the more I've desired to learn more and to be a little bit more disciplined about reading certain things and learning things that I don't know. So the other thing I have really learned too is that we don't know everything, and that's okay. That's okay. I try and teach my kids this too. It's like, it's okay to ask for help. Even I have to ask for help on certain things. That's why we get sales coaches and we get business coaches and we get mentors, because we can continually keep learning. So
as we approach the end, I always like to give people enough time to do the drop of all the social media stuff. So for people who want to learn more about Boveda, all its products, follow you all online, what are all the little different handles and websites they need to know?
Well, we are everywhere. So you've got bovedainc.com. You've got Boveda. What is our Boveda Inc. on Instagram? There's Boveda Tobacco. There's Boveda Cannabis, or Herbal. Is it Cannabis now? And now it's Cannabis. Boveda Music. We are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We are everywhere. And I'm sure if Rob's on here, he could probably list off all the handles that we have. But YouTube, Rob's doing YouTube videos all the time. So we try and maximize all the media outlets that we can.
And like you said earlier, I think people kind of think, they know all that they need to know about Boveda, or that Boveda's completely penetrated the cigar industry. So it's fun to kind of see how you all are figuring out ways to get even deeper into the industry. Because I think if you're like me, it takes a thing like coronavirus to kind of sit back and think like, maybe I can do a little bit more and get out there a little bit more. And maybe everybody doesn't know our story. So I know people have said that they really enjoyed learning more about you through this. So I think I'm interested and excited to see what new things you all are going to get into. Like I said, especially in the cigar space, since that's my main 9 to 5 and focus these days. So,
well, I want everybody to realize out there that we are cigar lovers. We are passionate about it, and we understand the challenges of storing and aging cigars at home, and that's kind of where this whole thing birthed from, and how we got into that. And so truly know that as we do things, we're doing it from our passion of our heart versus just, some marketing, department within the company that's saying, oh, let's do this. It's coming from us as smokers, but also from us really learning and listening to customers out there on how do we make their lives easier. And that's what we want to continue to strive for.
And for the final question, it'll be a leisurely kind of question. Your friend Ben wants to know, what is your handicap as a golfer, and what cigar will you be smoking this weekend?
That's a really good question. So I'm not a great golfer. I'm probably in a 21 handicap. I don't get to play enough to get that down. I think I could be a little bit better. I could be better than that, but so I'm not a great golfer. I can hit the ball, and I don't embarrass myself too many times. But so, and then what I'm going to be smoking this weekend? Well, right now I'm smoking a Padron 4000. I've got a Padron 6000. I've got a Monte Cristo in there. I've got a really, really old cigar that's unbanded. I'm not exactly sure what that is. But I try and, I smoke a lot of different cigars from all the different makers. But, right now I have a pretty good supply of Tatuaje, Padron, and Fuente, a lot of Altadas products. So, but right now I'm smoking a Padron. I love this cigar on the golf course because it's big and hardy, durable enough to take any wind, and I like the flavor. And it's not overly expensive.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. Like I said, thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak to me, and I look forward to our next encounter.
Yeah, well,
whenever
thank you.
That is.
Yeah, whenever that is. This is great. So I, really appreciate you having me on here. This is fun to just kind of chat informally, and we get to humanize Boveda for other people, and that's cool. But you guys do a great job. Thank you. Really do appreciate it. You guys have been really, really good to Boveda and trying to tell our story and giving us opportunities to talk about how to make the industry better. So.
Well, thank you. And like I said, look forward to continuing our working relationship, and see you around, I said, whenever COVID lets up.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, maybe TPE will happen. Let's hope it does. And then, what is Ben's handicap? That's my last question.
I don't think he'll share that. I don't think.
Is he you're throwing some money down on? Is he trying to juice me into a game or something?
I think he's mysteriously already pieced out for this.
Okay.
Right before your question. So
I'll send him a text.
Well, thank you again, and have a great weekend, and look forward to continuing to follow the Boveda story.
Great. Well, thank you. Everybody have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
You too.